Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Finance and Administrative Committee meeting scheduled to begin at 10:45, and I think we're going to get started right on time. With that, Nathan, do you want to take us through the roll call so that we can go through and document everything properly?
Yep, absolutely. Chairman DiCarlo, because we have trustees who are participating remotely by Zoom, I've got to run through these series of questions before calling the roll. And additionally, as an information item, as we proceed through the day's business, if there are any votes that must be taken, we will take those by a roll call vote. So members of the Finance and Administration Committee, in accordance with Tennessee Code 844-108, Section C3, I've got two questions to ask you for the record, and I will ask both of those questions once, and then I'll follow that with a roll call vote so you can respond to both of the questions. So the first question is, are you able to clearly hear us, the people who are participating, so that you can participate in the meeting? And for those who are participating remotely, would you identify persons in the room present with you from which you're participating in the meeting? So with that, I will call the roll and you can respond to both of those questions. Trustee Grisham?
I'm alone and I can hear you well.
Trustee Austin Ramsey?
Alone and can hear well.
Trustee Ron Ramsey?
Alone and can hear well.
Chairman Scott Niswanger? Chairman Niswanger, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay. And Trustee Kelly Wolf? And Chairman DiCarlo?
I am alone and I can hear clearly. Thank you.
Thank you all. So Chairman, I do not detect a physical quorum present. However, we do have a quorum that exists by inclusion of members who are participating by electronic means. And in accordance with Tennessee Executive Order 65, which permits safe, open, and transparent public meetings by electronic means, I would offer up to the board the following reasons that necessitate for this meeting. First, business critical to the operation of the institution are slated for this meeting. Of those, some of the items being approval of the October budget revisions, some financial presentations, and an update on our ETSU Foundation. Due to the COVID-19 virus outbreak and subsequent recommendations for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, as well as Governor Bill Lee, physical distancing measures and a limit on group gatherings are being observed. For these reasons, I would contend that participation by a quorum of the board members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. So Chairman, I would ask that a motion be made and a roll call vote be taken for the determination on the necessity for holding this meeting. An affirmative vote by a board member would signify that a necessity does exist for the meeting to proceed, and a dissenting vote would signify that a necessity does not exist for the meeting to continue. So Chairman, I'll turn it to you for a motion in a second, and then if we get that, we'll move on to a roll call.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right. Trustee Grisham?
I am present and I'm here and all of the above.
Thank you. Trustee Ron Ramsey?
Aye.
Chairman Niswanger?
Aye.
Trustee Wolf? And Chairman DiCarlo?
Aye.
All right. Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum and the meeting for necessity has been recorded. Also, I would like to reflect that there are additional members of our board who are participating other than those on the Finance and Administration Committee. The following trustees we have who are logged in with us this morning. We have Trustee Foley, we have Trustee Latimer, and Trustee Stegall-Jones all logged in with us this morning. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will turn it over to you for continuation of the meeting.
Thank you so much. I appreciate I'm glad I don't have to take us through that every time. With that, why don't we jump to the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the fiscal year 2021 October budget revisions, and I'm asking Dr. King to walk us through that if you would.
All right, Chairman DeCarlo and board members, our first agenda item is approval of the October revised budget. The budget approval is contained in the board consent agenda in this afternoon's board meeting, but the details of the revisions are going to be discussed this morning in this committee meeting. I'm going to share my screen with the PowerPoint in it. And hopefully you're able to see that now. I'm going to move it over here so I'm not looking in two different directions. The budgets for approval today are on page 3 through 6 of your committee agenda, and the PowerPoint is also in your agenda, and it begins on page 15. And we're going to begin with the main campus budget that's on page 3 in your agenda. The first item of note is that we're reducing our revenue budget while increasing our expenditure budget. The increase in expenditure budget is an anomaly that we will always be discussing when we're talking about the October budget. The July or original budget is always in balance, revenue to expenditures, as it should be. It's a reflection of the income statement where revenue and expenditures should be in balance. Things in the balanced budget actually change in October, because in October we take our unspent fees and revenues from prior years and we move them into the expenditure budget to allow for expenditure to take place in that year. We're in a little bit of a unique situation this year in that we actually have reductions in our revenue budgets this year. That is because the July budget was prepared back in February and March, pre-COVID, and prior to the finalization of the governor's budget. The July budget was prepared based on an enrollment projection of down 100 students. And the July budget was based on fully operational auxiliaries units. Since then, the whole world changed. So that's going to be reflected in this October revisions. So some of the changes that occurred are that instead of being down the 100 we projected, we were actually down 474 students. So we're going to be writing our tuition revenue down by $2.4 million. Our state appropriation went back to the level it was for FY 19. And so we're writing our appropriation down $3.3 million. We did get additional money for our Strong Brain Institute as a gift. So we're actually going to write that up a little bit. We reduced revenues in athletics and childcare due to the prediction that those revenues are going to be down. And then auxiliaries units, in particular housing and food service, are writing down their revenues by $6.5 million. Our housing units are at about 62% occupancy right now, and meal plans are down correspondingly to that. We're also down in parking revenues, in revenues from our CPA, our wellness center, and in vending, just because the traffic on campus has been reduced. So the total reductions in revenue are $13.7 million. So now we're going to talk about the additions or reductions and additions in the expenditures budget, because we have both. So kind of buried in these numbers, we have a $7 million base budget reduction across all functional units. Dr. Nolan went over that with the board In the summer, we talked about what we were going to be doing. The academic units took a 4.3% budget reduction, and administrative units took a 5.3% budget reduction. We removed the $1.2 million salary increase that was part of the state appropriation from winter. And you may remember we determined we would pool those just with anticipation that those monies would be pulled back from the state, which they were. We have a $2 million reduction in benefits and scholarships, and part of that is due to our decrease in enrollment, and just some savings that we saw in benefits in the last fiscal year. Then we had about a $500,000 reduction in transfers because we closed some construction projects and are bringing that money back from plant funds to the E&G budget. So that helps us out. We also have a $6.5 million reduction in auxiliaries expenditures that corresponds with their revenue reductions. So all of that information is highlighted on this slide. It shows that we're actually writing our revenue down by $13.7 million. And in total for E&G and auxiliaries, we're writing our expenditures and transfers up by $8.5 million. Our expenditure increases are in a large part related to those carry forward fees and other revenues. We're bringing 17 million in encumbrances and carry forward fees into the budget to be expended this year. We did have savings and stewardship by units in the university in the last fiscal year. So we've got $5.7 million of division carry forwards and one-time funding under the new budget model. We have a $1.7 million employee benefit increase that got passed through by the state. So we reduced it and we increased it at the same time. And then we had an increase in debt service payments of $1.2 million. And that's because primarily the Culp Center project was bonded, and now those mandatory principal and interest payments will be made in the current year. So that's a bit of a summary of the ins and outs for revenue and expenditure transfers. We had personnel changes, which is noted in your agenda item. I think it's on page 3. So we'll talk about that for just a minute. Faculty positions were reduced by 17. We had 12 reductions in arts and sciences, 2 in business and technology, and 2 in public health. We also had administrative reductions in athletics, business and finance, and arts and sciences. And then our maintenance, technical and professional positions reduced in our campus radio, in our child care centers, and in student life and enrollment. So that's a bit of summary of those main campus position reductions. 39 positions in total have been eliminated in this budget. So I'm going to roll back up. Are there any questions about the main campus budget or personnel changes?
BJ, let me ask a question. And again, I don't want to take up a lot of time. If a professor was making $100 last year and they anticipated they would be making $102, after the budget cuts, are they making 100 or 99?
They're making 100. So what happened was when the governor's budget was released in February and it had salary money in it and things started going south a little bit, we were uncertain that we would keep that money. And so we stuck it in pool accounts across the entire university. So we did not distribute it to individual departments or units. So everybody's salary at June 30 should be the same as their salary end of July, because we didn't change anything. There haven't been salary increases. The only increases that we truly had have been the faculty promotion that was approved by the board last year. So it went through as it should.
And if benefits in the previous year cost $15 per person, did they cost 16 this year or do they remain at 15?
They didn't remain at 15. There are increased costs that came in through the governor's budget, which we don't really get our hands on those documents until probably September from state F&A. So once we got those, we found there were increases in our post-employment benefit programs that we would have to pay a portion of, and in our health care, in our health insurance benefits. And so there are increases to the benefits budget.
And does the employee share in those increases or is that passed right to the university?
So they do. It's about a 20-80 split employee to university. And then oddly, it's about an 80-20 split between the state picking up that benefit cost and the university picking up that benefit cost. And so any benefit costs that get passed on to us have to be covered either by operating dollars in the state appropriation or by tuition and fee increases.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we'll move on to the College of Medicine. The College of Medicine is reducing their revenues by $2 million. That's with reductions in tuition and appropriation being put back to the FY19 levels, and also some reductions in medical residents participation agreement revenues. The expenditures budget instruction has decreased again by that medical resident participation agreements that had salaries and benefits included in them. And then the other areas are being written up in this budget due to carry forward funds. They're going to be used for things like faculty promotions, research incentives, startup funds for new faculty, and then also to cover that increased cost of employee benefits. Medicine was not requesting any new positions in this budget cycle. Family medicine is recording some increases in revenue because their state appropriation reduction was offset by actual increases in their medical resident participation agreements. Their expenditure increases are related to a new resident position in Bristol and 2 new resident positions in addiction medicine in Johnson City. They also are assisting College of Medicine with the Associate Dean for Rural Programs and have added that cost into their budget. And they also have increases in the cost of employee benefits. Family medicine is requesting those 3 new positions in faculty, and those are on a summary page, a couple of slides down the road here. So they're writing their revenue up by $96,000 and writing their expenditure up by $279,000. The College of Pharmacy has a decrease in revenue. They have a little bit of a enrollment decline, and that's reflected here. And the increases in expenditures are again driven by carry forward funds from the stewardship from last year. So those funds are coming in to add increases across the board for all their categories. They are adding one new faculty position. So they're writing their revenue down about $350,000, and they're writing their expenditure and transfer budget up by $1.5 million. So summary of the non-formula units, personnel changes is here. We're increasing faculty by 4 for all 3 of those units. We're shifting personnel between maintenance tech support and professional support. So we've upgraded some positions from the maintenance tech support to professional. So the total increase in personnel is 4 for those 3 units. So that's really the end of my presentation. I know it's a lot of information, especially convoluted this time by the revenue pictures, in particular with the main campus.
Any questions for Dr. King? Well, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the October revisions to the 2021 university budget?
So moved.
Second,
So, okay.
can we take the roll, please, Nathan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got the motion from Trustee Ramsey, and the second was from, I think I missed it.
I'll second it. Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll call the roll now. Trustee Grisham,
Aye.
Trustee Ron Ramsey,
Aye.
Chairman Niswonger,
Aye.
Trustee Wolf, and Chairman DeCarlo.
Aye. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Dr. King. And I think, Dr. King, we're gonna move on to the next agenda item, where if you would present, please, the 2020 unaudited financial statements.
All right. We do not yet have an audit report. The unaudited information is on pages 7 through 12 of your committee agenda, and the PowerPoint begins on page 24. State Audit has not yet expressed an opinion on the statements, but should be completing the audit soon. The audit exit conference last year was held in February of 2020, and we anticipate the same time frame for this year's exit conference. The printed audited statements should be available March or April and will be mailed directly to the board members by State Audit, as they have in the past. We are currently gathering audit reports from the component units for the university, which includes ETSU Foundation, Research Foundation, and the Medical Education Assistance Corporation. When we have all those reports here on campus, we'll package those and mail them out to the board members. If we start with our changes in assets, you'll see that our current assets have increased over the prior year. That's primarily due to cash that we have for our CARES Act funding. We were funded by the federal government with CARES Act money before 6/30. So it's recorded in our statements. And we also have funds on hand for some future projects that are anticipated. So we're holding some cash and some accounts receivable, which increased our current assets. Our capital asset increase is primarily due to the Martin Center and the Culp renovation projects, as those were substantially completed at year end. Our other assets went up slightly, and that was due to an increase in one of our retirement trust funds managed by the state. And then our deferred outflows decreased this year due to decreases for pension-related activities. Our liabilities and net position, current liabilities increased, and that is partly due to the current portion of long-term debt for the Martin Center, the Culp Center, and Millennium. Our non-current liabilities decreased this year, and that was due to decreases in our pension liabilities and our post-retirement liabilities. And also, we refunded about $2 million to the federal government in long-term liabilities held for the Perkins Loan Fund. Deferred inflows increased. Again, those deferred inflows and outflows are normally associated with our pension and OPEB activities, and so it increased substantially this year. And then our net position increased primarily because of our capital asset increase with Martin Center and Culp Center. And we also have some unrestricted funds, again, for future projects that have been set aside. Our operating revenues were up due to the fee increase. I think our total fee increase was 2.31% for FY 20. Grants and contracts also increased. That's primarily due to activity in grants for workforce development. We have some state workforce development grants, and we had a big increase in that area. Sales and services is down. Some of that is COVID driven because we pretty much canceled our camps and conferences for the spring and the summer. There's also some athletic revenues that would have been hit in the spring from COVID activities. That's also what's impacting housing and other auxiliaries. And with the help of the CARES Act funding, auxiliaries was in better shape at 6/30 than they would have been without that funding. We received over $3 million to offset the losses in housing and food service, which are reflected in this auxiliaries number, which would have been even worse if we had not gotten that funding. And then other revenue just remained flat for the year. Our operating expenses, we had the 2% wage increase, which also increased benefits last year. So that's reflected in salaries and wages and benefits. Our increase in utilities and supplies was driven by increases passed on by the state for insurance claims, marketing investments, and technology services investments. Our scholarships are increased fairly substantially. That's again due to CARES Act funding. We were provided $5.5 million of CARES Act funding for emergency grants to students, which we were required to book as scholarships. And so that's driving that change in numbers right there. And then depreciation remained flat for the year. Our state appropriation for FY20 increased due to outcomes funding and state funding for salary increases. Our gifts and grants increased over the prior year. We had an increase in foundation gifts that came to the university. And then CARES Act funding is also recorded in that gifts and grants line for the university portion of that, not the portion that passed through to the students. The capital appropriations was down, and that's because FY19 was inflated by the funding for the Martin Center. So that's really driving that reduction for this year. And then capital gifts is also a little bit of a related activity. We were gifted the Millennium Center and the Sky Bridge in FY19 and didn't receive any gifts like that of a capital nature in FY20. And our university investments are remaining flat between the 2 years. I think that is all I have on the unaudited financial statements. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So when it comes to the CARES Act, basically everything that's been received has been reflected in the 20 fiscal year.
Yes, because we had certainty of what the amounts were. And so if it was not received and expended, we recorded it as revenue and accounts receivable. So it was in the FY20 books. There is some CARES activity that's taking outside of what is the Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund called HERF. So we have some money coming in through THEC. We have possibly some TEMA money that will come in this year. And there are a few units across campus that received some CARES Act money that'll be recorded in, but it's very minimal, but it recorded in FY20 or 21, sorry.
For 21.
Yes, for 21.
Got it. And I guess I don't follow the changes they've been contemplated. You know, both the House and the Senate were considering changes. Did you notice if those $2 billion, $3 billion were going to impact the school?
We really haven't received any notification of that. There was so much, push and tugging going on some of that I think some of the groups that normally provide us with information, which would be the Department of Ed is one information source. Then our professional group, the National Association of College and University Business Officers, provides information. And then we also get information from THEC, and none of those have weighed in on what they thought we might get because it was so up in the air. We have made known our issues through the state level of the loss of revenue is impacting all institutions of higher education, either in just the auxiliaries area, the auxiliaries and athletics area, or the auxiliaries, athletics, and general funds. So we are being impacted in FY21.
Yeah, I guess we'll obviously be watching to see what happens either now or after January 20th. So any further questions on that area, or Dr. King, do you want to go on to the composite financial index section?
Sure, we can move on to the CFI. A little history. The indexes are in your agenda on pages 13 and 14, and in the PowerPoint on page 31 if you're following along. The Composite Financial Index is a measure of financial health and was introduced to private institutions by KPMG and Prager, McCarthy, and Seeley, and it was later modified for public institutions. The ratios are based on financial statement information, and it includes information for the university and the foundation, but it does not include information from MEAC, which I think comes into play a little bit when we're looking at some of the operating ratios for the College of Medicine and Family Medicine. The first ratio is the primary reserve. It's a measure of financial strength and flexibility, and its weight in the entire CFI is 35%, so it's pretty important. And it's a comparison of our expendable net assets to total expenses. All our units are above the watch level, and all are increasing except for pharmacy, which you see far exceeds the industry standard. And the reason for that is that one thing that we can do to make this ratio improve is to have reserves. And this ratio counts the reserves the foundation has in, or that pharmacy has in the foundation, as well as what is on hand in the university's books. So this is a trend history here, which I like to show, and you'll see that we are improving on this, and I think we're looking fairly good this year, far above the watch level and approaching the industry standard as a whole. The viability ratio is a measure of financial health similar to the coverage ratio. And it again is 35% of the total CFI, so it also is important. And it's a comparison of our expendable net assets and plant-related debt. All of our units are above the watch level, and all units are increasing, even if the increases are just slightly. But you can see that we've not hit the industry standard. We are above the watch level. And one thing I want to point out and then let you know my thoughts are, we're presenting this in November. Other institutions will be presenting theirs in December. And at that point in time, we will have a comparative to the average for all higher education institutions in the state of Tennessee, or at least for the universities. And so I think I'm going to propose that we defer this review until our February meeting in our next meeting cycles, so that I can give you that same information. So I'm not just comparing us against each other internally and then to a benchmark and a watch level, but I'm showing you how we compare against other institutions in the state. We just don't have that data on hand for this meeting. Our return on net assets ratio is 15% in the total calculation. So it is not as determinant to what the total calculation turns out to be, but it's a measure of total economic return for the fiscal year. And it's similar to the return on equity. It measures the change in net assets to beginning net assets. And of note is that in FY20, our beginning net assets had $4 million in local funding for capital projects, primarily due to an $8 million gift of the city when we received the Millennium Center. And so that inflated one of our numbers in the calculation and is what is driving this reduction this year on the main campus. This ratio could fluctuate like it has this year due to the timing of receipts for locally funded projects. And we've actually returned to a more normal level. And as you'll see, the yellow line is our combined measure. We are above the industry standard, we're above the watch, and you can see we're returning more to a normal level this year. Medicine's decline on that slide was because they had slower growth in their net assets. And we need to remember that medicine, family medicine, receive support from MEAC that is not recorded in these ratios at all. We have checked to see if we're doing the same thing that University of Tennessee is with their medical units in these ratio calculations, and it's our understanding that we are. They're excluding their practice arm from these calculations as well. Return on net assets is a measure of operating surplus. Oh, sorry, I've gotten to the wrong one. It's a measure of operating surplus for the year. It's similar to the profit margin. All our units are above the watch level. Medicine's numbers, again, are relating to a larger operating loss in FY20 and stagnant growth in non-operating revenues such as state appropriations. And we have been requesting additional state appropriations for operating for medicine and family medicine for a few years now. We just haven't received much in that regard. But you will again see that we are above the watch level as an institution, and we're coming up from where we were in 2019, so approaching the industry standard again. So then we get to the composite financial index, which takes all of those four ratios and combines them with their weights. And you'll see that we declined a little bit on all of them, but again, we're in good shape. We're in good financial health. We're approaching the 3.0 CFI industry standard. We're at 2.72 and still one of the highest levels that we have had in the past 6 years. So I think that CFI reflects that we're in good financial health. We continue to work on areas that we can make improvements, and the primary areas are in those first two financial indexes. And if we continue to improve our investments in our reserves, those ratios will grow, and they carry the most weight in the entire calculation.
And just so I'm clear, so your intent now is to do this analysis in February, and from that point forward, every February?
Yes, sir. I think it would provide more useful
I do too.
information. So we'll do that. I think it will be interesting to see. I think y'all will be pleased with our comparison with the other schools.
Any questions? Questions or comments? Well, Dr. King, why don't we go on to the tuition transparency report?
Okay. I'm going to stop screen sharing because I don't have anything related to the next two items. So the tuition transparency report in your agenda items on page 44 is a report that we have to submit. We're required by law to submit to state F&A each year by February 1. We've gone ahead and prepared it for your review here today. It is a report that shows what fees we increased in FY20 and what the use of those fees were in the year, and also the impact on student cost of attendance and financial aid. So the report shows that we increased tuition and mandatory fees by 2.31% and generated approximately $2.7 million. $2 million in expenditures were made for salary improvements, benefit increases, inflationary costs for facilities and other operations, and for enrollment systems. These were all approved by the board in the budget process. And then approximately $700,000 in fee revenue was used to enhance campus concerts, to fund student organizations on campus, to improve the ID Bucks ID system on campus, for network technology improvements and parking facilities. So we have to prepare the report and send it down each year by February 1, and it's used in our next cycle budget process with the state. So we'll be mailing that report to the Office of Legislative Budget Analysis in January to make the deadline.
Do you receive the other universities' exact same report so you could do a comparison across the board?
No, we don't. We have talked to the other schools about this to make sure we were all using the same format, but we have not shared with each other what we actually reported to the state budget analysis folks. So we've not done that, but we are all using this same one-page format to produce a report and send it down.
But you know, for example, ours is 2.31. You know, the other universities are 2.25 or 3.1, you know, in total.
Correct.
Okay.
So we could go look at their information on either the THEC website or through their board documents and see what their board approved for the use of tuition increases, because they're just like you. They're going through that process of saying, we're using these 5 criteria when we're thoughtfully looking at tuition increases. And with those, we anticipate the use of the tuition increase will be for A, B, C, D. And then I think then when they put their report together, just like I do, we go back and see what the board approved for the use of the fees and verify the use of the fees for that purpose. I think that's all they're really trying to get us to do, but we are doing it.
Any questions, comments? Okay, Dr. King, you want to take us through the 250,000 or greater agreements for the quarter?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So each committee meeting, we provide a report on contracts or purchase orders over $250,000. This report does not include revenue or federal contracts, amendments to software systems or agreements, and contracts processed through the State Building Commission. And that's due to the fact that we have exclusions in reporting those same items to state fiscal review. We don't have to go to fiscal review for those items, but we do send reports in quarterly that outline all of those so that they are aware what we're doing. So our report is on page 46 in your agenda items. We had 2 contracts over 250,000. One was for equipment for information technology services, and the other was for library subscriptions. And then we also have a couple of RFPs in process. They were in process at September as of the date of this report. And one was for managed internet services for housing, and the other is for renovation services for facilities. So those are the items that we have for contracts and agreements over $250,000.
Any questions or comments around that? Okay, Dr. King, I think you're off the hook, and let's go to the last item on the agenda, which is a foundation update from Pam Ritter.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited to present this today. I am going to share a few slides with you. Hopefully I do it correctly. Yay, I think it's there. So what I want to share with you is just an overview of what's going on, not just with the foundation, but advancement also. We've got a lot of activities going on, and as everyone has said, in a very interesting climate. So I want to make sure that you understand where we are. The first thing I think is interesting for you to all know is advancement is not just the foundation. It is university development, it is the Alumni Association, and it's the foundation. And the reason this is important is we have all the fundraisers under the university advancement and all the other opportunities such as Day of Giving, annual support, and all of our background or back office things under their development. The Alumni Association just had a wonderful addition to our family. In July, we brought in Whitney Gates, who is our new executive director for the Alumni Association, and she has hit the ground running. She is already making an impact on some of the activities in a online opportunity. So she's figured that one out, and she's making some great progress there. And then the foundation, I will get into much more detail as we go along. I think it's also important to know what our mission and vision is. As an advancement office, our job is to work with alumni and friends and bring in funding for the university. And that's important to know because the foundation itself, as we're looking at how to spend our money, we need to make sure that we're keeping this vision in mind. And then the mission, of course, is to work with all of our external partners and make sure that they're involved in our opportunities. We're all about building relationships. And if we can't build relationships, we are not going to be successful. So what we did is we took a campaign. We started this in 2017. And this particular opportunity is now in its third year. We have a goal of $120 million, and we're planning on concluding that in June 30th of 2022. I think I put the wrong date in the original information I sent out. Maybe that was wishful thinking. I thought we were done already, but we're not. We've got a few more years to go. The strategic goals were set a few years ago, and this is also being led by the Advancement Office and the Foundation. Our goal is to raise $25 million per year by the year 2026. We are heading that direction. I don't think we're going to have any problems reaching that, and I'm very excited to keep watching that number grow. The next one was to increase our alumni participation rate from 3.5 to 10% by 2026. I will tell you, this is going to be a difficult one to reach. This particular year with COVID, we're not getting out as much. Our Day of Giving had to change. We're actually 3%. So we went down, we were at 3.8 and we were excited. We were heading the right direction, and now we've dropped, but it's because we're not out there knocking on doors like we normally are. So I do anticipate this going back up where it should be. I will tell you the national average for this is actually 8%. So we're going to keep pushing, we're keep working as hard as we can to reach this goal. And I am an optimist, so we'll see what happens there. And then obviously the third strategic goal is to engage our donors and build enthusiasm for ETSU. So, foundation endowment. We undertook a change of our managers 2 years ago. We now work specifically with Goldman Sachs. They are wonderful to work with. In this interesting climate, starting in March 2020, our endowment went down from over $100 million down to $84 million. And we were all antsy about that, but the entire world was looking at the same opportunity. So we worked with Goldman Sachs on a literally weekly basis. We met with them, the executive team and the investment team met with them continually to talk about where we are, where our investments are, and to make sure that we were heading in the right direction. We are a very conservative group, I will tell you that. And I think that's served us well because now, November 2020, we are at 107 million. So we have jumped, we came back and then some from where we were back in March. And talking to Goldman Sachs, they say that we have actually done better than most of our peers. So being conservative did not hurt us one little bit. And I'll show you where some of our investments are in a little bit. It's been a great opportunity. Our last meeting for the investment committee, specifically with Goldman Sachs, was in October 29th. So I say we're conservative. Our investments, we have anywhere from 10, this is where our funding is invested, anywhere from 10 to 30% for our fixed income. This is a charge that we gave Goldman Sachs. They look at this 24/7. We look at it a lot, but they are constantly looking at where our funding is and constantly making adjustments as they see fit within our budget or within our range. So our range was fixed income 10 to 30%, equity 25 to 55%, non-equity 10 to 30, and then hedge funds. We just started getting into hedge funds a little bit. Here's where we actually are. Our money market, as you can see, about 0.4%. Our fixed income, Dr. Nolan, I know, has been very interested in this, is how do we hang on to this money without burying it in the backyard? How do we make sure that we're where we need to be? And our fixed income right now is almost 40% overall. So I think we're being pretty conservative there, and that's protecting us a lot. Our equity, 35%, you can see overall. And these figures, as you can tell, were from June. So we are higher than this now, but the percentages are still the same. Our asset funds, how it's delineated within our overall fund type. The majority of it, as you can see, is in our endowment. And this has increased. Well, this is not increased from last year. We've done a few more things because BJ just explained earlier where some of our funding is going in. And a lot of our funding right now is going into facilities. And a lot of our money also is unrestricted. Donors want to make gifts and they want to say specifically where it's going. So we need to make sure that that is outlined in another area. So we honor all of our donors' wishes. By classification, again, I told you we're being quite conservative. 35 to 40% are in bonds, about 55% in stocks, and the rest of it in cash. By comparison from this year to last year, our gifts are up slightly, which is absolutely amazing in this climate. If anyone ever told me that I'd be fundraising online or through phone calls, I'd tell them they're crazy. You have to develop relationships. You can't do it this way. Well, we figured out how to do it. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute, but we've got some very creative fundraisers and we are making improvements. We are reaching people, just not necessarily in person. How we decide how our funding is spent. One of the things that has been set up with ETSU Foundation for years is we have a very conservative method of distributing our funding. We look at the balance of our scholarships and how long they've been in the university or in the foundation, and we distribute it accordingly. And so we look at 2%, 3%, and 4%. And I know you're all thinking, well, good grief, aren't you bringing in more than 4%? Yes, we are. And that's the advantage. So what we're taking that balance of that and we're putting it in a reserve. And so I call it a rainy day fund, but it's a reserve. And the purpose of that is if we ever have any issues where we, for some terrible reason, our endowment gets below where we have to meet our expenses, we have that funding in reserve and we can then use that. It just is, it's been a great protection and I think it's very fiscally responsible. And so we are going to continue with that process. Our distributions, required distribution in 2020 was 2.9. In 2021 is 3 million in the endowment and 1 million in unrestricted funds for a total of 4 million. And again, we're very conservative, but I think it's heading us in the right direction. Our payments and transfers this year, capital, we had $180,000 for the Memorial Center locker room. These are all funding that was put into the endowment or the foundation, I'm sorry, that then we had to pay for. 200,000 for Lamb Hall renovations, 1 million for the Boulevard Commons, and you're probably hearing some of that noise out my door right now. There's a construction going outside my window, making a lot of noise, but that's progress. Funds in excess of 2.8 million were distributed for scholarships and funds in excess of 6.4 for departmental expenses. So the foundation comprehensive campaign, as I said before, it's $120 million over 5 years. We have 2 more years left. And year to date, when I made this originally, we were at 85.5 million. We are now at 86.2 million. So we are continually growing in this opportunity. Now, as I said, we're finding interesting ways to do this. And we have fundraisers who are out there literally Zooming their donors, making introductions over a phone call, over the internet. They are hosting events. This is the fun part. They are doing educational or creating educational opportunities for our alums to participate. And we are having hundreds and hundreds of our alums jumping into these various educational opportunities to learn more about what's going on campus. And then from there, we're developing the relationship and then can find the opportunities for them to help support the university. One example is one of the fundraisers was going to meet with a couple from the College of Medicine, and she found out that their passion was to help others and animals. So she sent some cookies to them ahead of time with masks on the cookies in frosting. So it was a great fun icebreaker, not frosting ice, but icebreaker to help with that opportunity. We've had the College of Education and the Alumni Association partner together to help parents and grandparents learn how to teach their students or tutor the students as they're going through this home environment with their children. So we're just finding a lot of ways to interact that it's helping. And the alums feel good about it. They're showing in our numbers. So I'm real tickled about the way that the direction we're going in that. One of these days, we'll be back to meeting in person. We'll be back to our President's Circle events. But for right now, we're doing it the best way we possibly can. Our goals for the campaign, as I said, 120 million. And this is how it's divided. We started with the department heads, the chairs, the faculty department heads, chairs, deans, and went on up to the administrators and said, where do we need to raise money? What areas are most important at this university? Obviously, scholarships, programs, faculty, and facilities. So as you'll look at it, our goal for scholarships was 21 million. We're at 22.3 million already. We aren't stopping. We need more scholarships, but this was what was identified up front that we needed scholarship or needed funding for. And we're going to continue to look for opportunities there. Program support, again, we have met our goal there, but there's a lot more programs that we can continue to work with. Faculty, we've got a ways to go there. We've got some people, we're looking at some chair opportunities, but we aren't quite there yet. We've still got another 1.5 years to go, so we'll keep working on that. And then facilities, obviously Lamb Hall, the the Performing Arts Performance Center, the Humanities Center, which is now going to be called Academics Facility. So we have opportunities like that to continue to raise money for. And as I said, we're actually at 86.2 million. And that's quick. That's it. Questions?
Any questions for Pam?
A good presentation, Pam, but it's nice to have visibility on this. And I hope we can do more of this. And keep pushing for the 120.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Thank
My
you.
Zoom's not working after today, so don't try and contact me.
I'll call you instead. How's that?
Yeah, all right.
So Pam, what's the percent of the overall foundation we have in equities?
I just, let's see, let me get back to that page.
It was,
I think 55%, I believe. I'm going to find it real quick.
Right.
Yes.
and when you say hedge funds, does that include private equity or is it literally hedge funds?
Literally hedge funds.
So no private equity investments.
Mhm.
No, we're just getting into that also because that's an area that we need to make sure that we're the problem with hedge funds, even though it's very beneficial and you could get a lot more money or percentage wise from hedge funds, they have a longer return on their investment. And we have to look at our scholarships need to be today. So, or next year, 3 years. So we really can't, with hedge funds, your investment is 20 years, 10 years, maybe. We have trouble going out that far because sometimes we have an immediate.
Well, I understand the hedge funds, but you said you're looking at potentially investing in private equity as the years go forward. Is that just something under advisement?
That's something under advisement right now.
Okay. Any other questions?
Chairman DiCarlo, just to one point, as we're looking at the diversification of investments across the foundation, another area that Pam and her staff are exploring is the opportunity to acquire hard assets that have retail and rental revenue that could help support the operations of the foundation as well. She had referenced the backyard, and rather than investing resources, literally burying them in the backyard, could we take those assets and acquire things that are hard and fixed, maybe in our neighboring proximity to campus, that could return revenue long-term and short-term. So just wanted to provide a little bit additional visibility around some of the things the foundation's considering. And then to echo your comments and Chairman Neiswanger's comments of gratitude towards Pam and her staff. We were low 80s in March, and to be at 107 today, I never would have expected to be there if you'd have asked me in April. So I just wanted to, on behalf of faculty, staff, and students who have scholarships and chairs that are supported by the work of the team, just wanted to say thank you.
It is a team. You're correct, and thank you.
Well, I hope the valuable lesson is never panic.
Oh,
The
gosh.
strategy
That's right.
and see it through.
That's, yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Great job, Pam.
Thank you.
So with that, any other business, any other issues that need to be discussed that anyone has? And I just want to thank Dr. King and Pam for doing all the heavy lifting as usual, and really appreciate their efforts and the hard work they put in.
Yeah. Yeah. BJ, you guys always do a wonderful job in pulling it together and making things work wonderfully for the university.
I think Pam and I would both want to say we have great staff, and without those staff, we couldn't even be here. So we really appreciate all the folks working in business and finance and in advancement for helping us do what we have to do.
They make us look good. I like that.
That's right.
Right.
So can I have a motion to adjourn so I can do it officially?
I make a motion that we adjourn.
In a second.
Yeah. Second.
Second.
Well, thank you so much.